Are the Maple Leafs close to making a blockbuster trade to find their Tavares replacement? We'll discuss the latest on that and the departure of one of their top prospects. You're listening to the Locked On at Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On at Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's happening, Dave?
Look who's back.
I am. I don't know if we got much color. It wasn't a very long trip. It was a nice trip, nice little weekend getaway down south. But and I was it's kind of odd to me whenever like you go down south for in the middle of the summer, like in June. But it was a fun little getaway, that's for sure. I got to watch the game 4 of the Cup final in Florida with Floridians when Edmonton made that unreal comeback down 3-0, came all the way back, took it to OT, and then Leon scored in overtime there. And I was giving the jeers to everyone in that bar that I was watching with. I was enemy number one, but I was stoked to see Edmonton win that game. It was a really awesome hockey game. It's been a great series. It truly has. And man, if only we can get the Maple Leafs to make a deep run like that, and we can celebrate like that for Toronto. I know, Dave.
All going so long until Mike's like, about those Leafs.
Yeah, well, it's the Locked On Leafs podcast. You always got to find a way to transition it into the Maple Leafs. There's a lot going on, though, in Leafland right now. Like, obviously, Florida, Edmonton, they're doing their thing. But the rest of the league has really started to move on. It sounds like, some trade wins are picking up, right? The Chris Kreider deal already went through last week, and now it sounds like potentially some more big maneuvers could be made within the coming days here prior to the NHL awarding the Stanley Cup to one of these two clubs. And Toronto could be in the mix. There's some reports and rumors that they're heavily interested in a very solid veteran player, a second line center. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll also discuss the Leafs losing one of their top prospects. Roni Hirvonen has decided to go back to Finland. We'll tell you all about what that could mean for the Maple Leafs and their prospect pool. And the Olympics named their first 6 names, or each country named the first 6 players, the initial 6 to their roster. A couple of Leafs on those lists as well. So we'll get into all of that today. But let's start with the big news, obviously. And that's, been reported now that the Maple Leafs heavily interested in New York Rangers forward Mika Zibanejad as a potential John Tavares replacement. What do you make of that news, Dave? Mika Zibanejad, a Maple Leaf? ?
I thought we were kidding about that. We brought it up last week. And I'm like, no, there's no way Mika Zibanejad would be an option for the Leafs.
I think you gave it a 4. Like that was when we were playing the trade options game, and I threw a Mika Zibanejad. I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? How happy would you be on the I'm stoked-o-meter, 1 to 4 or 1 to 10? He's a 4. Would now that this
consider the other guys that were being listed with Mika Zibanejad, he was not exactly the belle of the ball.
So you don't love this news? Is that what you're telling me? You don't love it? I'm
not ecstatic about it because, like, we're talking about changing it's gonna sound vomiting to keep talking about changing the DNA of this team. And what's been Mika Zibanejad's calling card is that kind of can be inconsistent and doesn't really strike me as a Craig Berube player, by the way. Like, I know he's got size, but he doesn't play like a player with size. And, he could be a streaky player. A couple years ago, really good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year, not bad in the playoffs. But other than that, it's just, I don't know. To me, they could do a lot worse than Mika Zibanejad. I'll say that. It just doesn't provide me with that excitement that when you bring up like a Nazem Kadri, or who were some of the other names that we brought up? You brought up JT Miller.
Yeah, I mean Elias Pettersson if he were to become available. Yeah, there were some other names out there. I mean, the free agent market, could they go like the Matt Duchene route? Possibly. But it sounds like Mika Zibanejad could possibly be the interest of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Here's my question though, Dave, and this is something that we got to always bring back to, and it's really unfortunate. And maybe we should really just stop assuming that Tavares, like that they want to bring Tavares back, because I don't know, like if they seriously do have interest in Mika Zibanejad and they're talking with the New York Rangers about bringing him in, I mean, like that is probably because Tavares would be option B to a Zibanejad. Is that kind of what like you read into that? Because that's how I see it. Like if they bring in Mika, like they're not bringing Tavares back. Like that's just not going to happen, right?
To me, it's more. Yeah, it's more so Tavares. The Leafs think, okay, let's get a long-term deal done. We'll bring the AAV down. Tavares is just, from what we're hearing, it's like, well, it's not going to go down as much as you think it's going to go down. And I'm sure the Leafs have also a wondering of, well, if we can get a little more cost certainty with someone like Zibanejad, we don't need to worry about a Tavares. But
here's where I don't really understand this and outside of making a change, like this is how you change the DNA. You got to change the group somehow, and this would be a way to make change, I suppose. That's really the only argument for this I can see. But like, I mean, Mika Zibanejad, you look at that contract, he's 32 years old, first of all. So it's not like he's young. Like he's only a couple years younger than Tavares anyway. He's got 5 more years left on that deal at $8.5 million. 5 by $8.5 million. I mean, I can't see Tavares costing any more than that, if even that much, on a possible 4 or 5 year deal. And if that's the case, why would you give up assets to bring in a Mika Zibanejad to pay him that type of money when you could probably bring back Tavares at a very similar, maybe even slightly lower rate? Like maybe it's not 5 by 5, maybe it's 5 by 6.5 or 7, but that's still cheaper than the 8.5 that Mika Zibanejad is going to cost you, and whatever assets it is to get him. Like this is where it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Again, outside of the well, they need to make a change somehow argument, sure, but you're paying a guy who's arguably worse and costs more money, and you're giving up assets to do it. I just don't know if that's really a smart thing for the Leafs to be doing.
Yeah, like the only way it makes any sort of sense is if that the Rangers are throwing him away, right? Like they're just not looking to get him much back for Zibanejad. But even then, it's like, well, yeah, you're also got to pay. There's a reason why they're giving up Zibanejad. He costs a lot of money, and yeah, and they're also not certain on him being a player that they can win around or build around as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there, right?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I just like when I hear Zibanejad, again, when you brought it up last week, it was a 4 because it's just like, how much different is he going to be from John Tavares in terms of like production and bringing? It's not an upgrade.
No, it's not an upgrade.
It's more of a lateral move, and it costs you more on cap space.
I don't know if you're going to find an upgrade on Tavares, though. Like, I think if those are the expectations that people have on this, they need to temper them. Because, again, like, Tavares just scored 38 goals. And I don't think he's going to score 38 again, but he could still be a 30-goal scorer next year, right? Like, you're probably not going to find an upgrade on Tavares, just like you're not going to find an upgrade on Mitch Marner. You got to find something, hopefully, that's different. And because they're going to play a different style of hockey, maybe you grind out more wins, those 2-1, 3-2 wins than you will, those 5-2, 6-2 drubbings that the Leafs were prone to doing from time to time, right? So that's kind of what you're hoping for. They're not going to be a better team on paper, but they'll be a different team on paper, and maybe they'll be deeper and just overall that'll make them a better team, or at least a more successful team. Like that's what you're looking at and hoping turns out to be the case. But Zibanejad didn't have a terrible year this season. He had 18 goals, he had 40 assists, so 58 points, this past year, but 2 years ago, he had 38 goals and 91 points. That was a career year. And the year before that, in the playoffs, he had 24 points in 20 games at age, I think it was age 29 or 30. And that was when New York went to the Eastern Conference Final against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, that was a great year. 24 points in 20 games. Pretty solid. He's had varying success in the playoffs. 63 points in 74 playoff games. He's won multiple rounds. He doesn't have the scarring that, John Tavares has, right? He doesn't have that type of scarring here with the Maple Leafs or Mitch Marner for that matter. So that is something that is different as well. He won't have to draw on and have that weight on him, like Tavares and Marner typically do every year they get to the postseason. So that would be different. But yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to make a lateral move, at best, a lateral move, probably a slight downgrade, and pay more both in assets and in money. It's a questionable signing for me. I don't know, but it does seem like, all these names keep popping up. It seems like they're trying to find an alternative to Tavares as opposed to just getting him signed and, get him locked in. And then let's just worry about what you're going to do on the wing to replace Mitch Marner. That's what I thought would be happening. And it sounds as though they're keen on not only replacing Marner, but also looking around, trying to find a 2C to fill that hole as well. And Zibanejad seems to be the flavor of the week right now.
Yeah, and it's, I read, so I was trying to first figure out where the heck this report came from. I know Jonas Siegel brought his name up, and then Arthur Staple kind of said like the Leafs would show interest. And I'm just like, I don't like, again, he just doesn't scream to me as a DNA player the Leafs want.
Maybe people listen to our pod and they were like, that kind of makes sense. Well, I think too is because like the Leafs are looking for a second line center, right? And after the Rangers trade out Chris Kreider, Zibanejad is now the longest tenured Ranger on the roster. And maybe there's just some linking of, maybe they'll look to, turn over the roster even more and move out a veteran like Zibanejad. And I think, Toronto would make sense on paper. It's what they're looking for is a second line center. It's interesting though, because I did see, I Googled it quickly, but there's a New York Post article that was written today as well. Apparently, who wrote this? Molly Walker actually wrote this, and Mika Zibanejad's wife on Twitter basically came out and is trying to refute the report that there is trade interest in Mika Zibanejad. Because keep in mind, he does have a no trade, full no move clause. So if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he's not going anywhere. And according to his wife, Mike Sullivan flew out to their home in Sweden when he got hired. So that's, I think notable. And they just bought a new house in the New York area. So it doesn't sound like they're preparing to go anywhere. And again, he has a no move clause, full no move, full no trade. So this could just be jarred up speculation. And this is quite literally exactly what his wife said. It's so interesting with newspaper articles that there's zero truth to it. Oh, well, you sit here sometimes and think, how did that go through? The rumor has been taken out of thin air. Very interesting. That's what his wife posted on Instagram earlier today. Kind of funny there. So who knows? Who knows what's going on here? If the Leafs are indeed interested in Mika Zibanejad, or if he's even willing to trade, waive his no trade to come to Toronto. But either way, I don't see it as a move that betters his team, even if that does end up happening. It's not one that I would be on board with. I would prefer Tavares and all his baggage over Mika Zibanejad, who's coming off of a down year at that.
Yeah, I just don't see the benefit of the Leafs doing a deal like that when you really, unless you're just getting a sweetheart deal, I just don't see it.
Yeah, like there'd have to be like some salary retention involved. Like you're just not bringing him in at 8.5. That's pretty much the crux of it. But whether or not they want to eat salary for 5 years, I don't know about that. But we'll see where that goes. We'll definitely keep you guys locked into what's going on the trade front, on the Mika Zibanejad front, and anything else that might happen with the Maple Leafs and their top 6, core 4, whatever the heck is going on with this group. It buckle up. We said it was going to be an interesting offseason, and it's been rumor mill central ever since the offseason kicked off. All right, when we come back, a big-time prospect has departed the Maple Leafs organization to go overseas. We'll tell you who that is and how crushing it could possibly be and what it means for the depth in the organization and the prospect pool for the Buds. We'll get to that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's edition of Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein. Give you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And again, if you're a person that's looking for the perfect grab and go snack, then you'll love the no shell variety. You don't get that mess. You can snack at your desk, on a road trip, or you just need a quick protein boost. They're always a go-to. And if you love if you like cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on, again, whichever podcast spot you use, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever. You can also find us on YouTube as well. All right, the Locked On Leafs podcast continues. We just were talking about Mika Zibanejad, one of those, a Swede who's played extremely well over the course of his career, was not named to the original, the initial 6-man Swedish roster, I might add. We'll tell you who was added to the initial rosters of each and every country. 2 Maple Leafs were named to the initial roster. So we'll get to that news in just a moment. But there was also some breaking news earlier today in Leafland. They had Roni Hirvonen sign in Finland. He was a prospect of the Maple Leafs, a former second-round pick of the Buds back in 2020. He was taken 59th overall by the Maple Leafs. He was 23 years old. He's played the last 2 seasons in the American League, 96 games, had 17 goals, 17 points, 17 goals, 17 assists for 34 points. Just never really found his footing here in North America after playing pretty well in the Finnish league, and certainly, as a prospect, good enough to be taken second overall, and was considered actually a pretty strong pick at the time, a guy who fell a little bit in the draft, played for the Finnish World Junior team, but unfortunately just couldn't quite find his footing in North America, and he finds his way back to Finland, signing, was it with Helsinki? I think I saw he ended up signing with. He signed with a Finnish club, and will no longer be continuing pursuing Karpats. Yes, will no longer be pursuing an NHL career for the time being. What did you make of this news? Kind of stings, because Hirvonen was a player that, again, it's the old regime. It is the old regime, but it's just another one of those prospects and a high, valued pick, second rounder, that didn't even play a single game for this group.
That's what kills me. Didn't even get a look in the NHL. Spent 2 years in the AHL. There was some sort of promise, right? He had a decent time at the World Juniors. You figured if all goes well, he could figure into your depth at some point down the road. And it just never materialized. And that draft, people have to remember, the Leafs traded. I think they traded back.
It was a pick. Yeah, they traded back with Ottawa and picked up a couple of picks, and it was essentially the trade ended up being Tyler Kleven for Roni Hirvonen and Topi Niemela. And at the time, the Maple Leafs were said to have crushed that trade because both Niemela and Hirvonen were both ranked higher than Clevin was on most draft boards. Well, Clevin's in the NHL right now, playing third pair minutes for the Ottawa Senators, and both Hirvonen and Niemela haven't played a single game in the NHL, and both have left North America to go back to Finland to continue their professional hockey careers. And you look at that draft in its entirety. The Maple Leafs had 12 draft picks that year, and this was a strange draft. To be fair, this was the COVID draft where a bunch of players didn't get to finish out their seasons. There's a lot of scouts who weren't really able to go overseas. It was a strange draft, but the Leafs had 12 picks in the 2020 NHL draft. They have 0 NHL games played from that draft. 12 picks, 0 NHL games played. That's quite gross, to be honest with you. And you wonder why this team is struggling to fill the bottom end of the roster and find prospects, and why they have such a terrible prospect cupboard.
It's making trades with other teams with prospects too.
Yeah, it's those years, like 2019, 2020, 2021. Like, you're supposed to have those guys hit for you, and then at 22, 23, 24, that's when those gems kind of are flourished and become NHLers. And they have not been able to produce a single NHLer out of this draft. Literally 0 NHL games played, 12 drafted players, 0 NHL games played from this draft. It's been 5 years. It's been 5 years. You go back the year before, only one player has really been a regular in the NHL. That's Nick Robertson, who can't even find the lineup right now. So the last those two drafts, 2019, 2020, nothing. They got nothing out of them. It's really a big reason why this team is kind of in the spot they're at, with always having to try and trade for or spend heavy in free agency for those bottom end guys, and have not been able to develop much talent outside of Matthew Nyes. I guess it was just such a weak 3-4 year drafting period.
The worst part, you look at the player that was drafted after Roni Hirvonen, Will Coley.
He'd be a perfect middle six player for Toronto right now. Perfect.
Really good player for the Rangers. Now, the only thing the Leafs could potentially say is maybe there's hope that somebody like Artur Akhtyamov, if he continues to develop, maybe he can be one of those players that's a bit of a, you think it was a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
Villanova is kind of the one I was like, he showed some good things with the Marlies, but that's the Marlies. I think he's already played 2 or 3 seasons already in the Marlies, and I haven't heard any.
3 years. Yeah, he's played 3 years with the Marlies. Had a career year. I'm using quotations there. 40 points in 55 games, just 4 goals. So he's not, a goal scorer by any means, but maybe he'll get a sniff with the club. But again, like, these are guys who are on. This is from the Dubas era, right? Like, these are all guys that were drafted by Dubas and company, and they're no longer here, right? Shandy's not here, Dubas isn't here, the coach isn't here, even that, like, the head of scouting, like, they're not here either, right? Like, they've gone through 2 new heads of scouting since then, right? Wes Clark was there for a while, and now he's gone, and they got a new director in tow that they brought in from Dallas. This will be his first draft with him. So yeah, it's very interesting. And again, it awful drafting. And really, you can honestly look at the entire era of Kyle Dubas. This, like, I'm trying to look through and see if anyone of any substance, like, you go back to, it was 2017 or 2018, his first draft. 2018, right? Was Sandin the first player he took, or Liljegren?
No, I think Liljegren was his first.
Okay. So
he came in. Sorry. He came in with Tavares. Like, he took over as GM when Tavares came to Toronto.
So that'd have been
2018
draft. Okay. So since 2018, he had what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drafts. No, he wouldn't take these into account. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he had 5 years as general manager, he was in charge of 5 drafts. How many players do you think have played at least 100 games in 5 drafts?
3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Technically 5. 5 players have played more than 100 games in 5 years. That's averaging 100 game player per season, I guess. But of those 5 that I mentioned, how many of them are still with the team, do you think? 3.
Half?
The answer is 3.
3. So 3.
Yeah.
I should have just stuck with 3.
Yeah. Matthew Nyes, Nicky, Bobby, and Pontus Holmberg, all with over 100 games. And then Sean Dursey and Rasmus Sandin are the other 2 who are no longer with the Leafs but have played more than 100 games. But that's it. Like all of the players that they drafted over the course of 5 seasons, and they had a lot of draft picks, not a lot of high picks, right? Not a lot of first rounders, but they had a lot of picks, and they just could not find guys late in drafts to come through and do anything. I think Pontus Holmberg is the only player within that 5-year span outside of the top 3 rounds to even play more than a handful of games. I'm actually looking right now. It's true. Outside of Pontus Holmberg, that 5-year stretch where Kyle Dubas was the general manager, he is the only player outside of the top 3 rounds to play more than 11 games, because Abruzzese played 11. So that's it. One player in 5 years outside of the top 3 rounds to play more than 11 games, a dozen games or more. Brutal drafting is a big reason why the Leafs find themselves kind of where they're at right now.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, like just one of those things where it should have been brought up a long time ago that the drafting hasn't been good enough, right? Like ever since the Leafs, like I just remember every time looking at all those Leafs drafts during their rebuild years, 2015, 2016, right? Oh, this guy's going to be a decent pick if he develops right. And it's just like, no, they all flamed out.
Sure, but the ones that hit, I guess, they're all top 10 picks.
Like I know. It's easy to hit on those top 10 guys. I also remember people were talking about like the Oilers, and it's like, how many first overall picks did they hit and not hit? Like,
right.
It's easy to hit on those first round picks. Generally, the first round is usually one of your easiest rounds to get. The real good teams, like Tampa was the model for this for how many years?
Yeah.
All those guys they picked outside of the first round.
Point, Anthony Cirelli, Palat, all these guys, Killorn, Chernak, like all these players taken late in rounds, late in drafts, third rounder or worse. Even Kucherov was a second round pick, wasn't a first round pick. So yeah, I mean it's no secret that you have to draft and develop in the cap era, and the Maple Leafs have not done that, and that's why they've been in cap hell for many, many years, and why they have no picks and no prospects, because because they don't have any valuable prospects, they had to trade away all their picks over the years instead of prospects, and then this year they finally trade a couple of prospects that they had taken in Fraser Minton and Nikita Grabenkin, and now they're back to what do we have? Easton Cowan, Ben Danford, and then it really drops off after that. And again, those were first round picks. Outside of that, squat, nothing in the prospect cupboard, and they don't have a first round pick this year either. So how they're going to trade their way into top 6 talent, I still do not know, Dave. I still do not know.
I really don't. And again, this is why they brought in a new guy to run the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And where did they go? They went to Dallas, another team that has been pretty exemplary at drafting and developing.
Yeah.
So I think it took too long for them to realize this. And again, you don't realize how poorly your draft record is until a few years after you make those picks. But it was something that was being talked. That should have been talked about a lot earlier, let's just say.
Yeah, and we should also acknowledge 2020, like rest in peace to Rodion Amirov, who was the first round pick of them, who unfortunately lost a battle to cancer, a few years ago. So he could have turned out to have been a good prospect if he was able to play, but unfortunately passed away before being given an opportunity. But it's just a tough draft. It's a tough stretch of like 5 years where they really weren't able to uncover much of anything. And before that, they did great, right? Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, those are top 10 picks, right? Like Nylander, 8th overall, Marner, 4th overall, Matthews, the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, you're gonna hit on those, but then you get deeper into the draft, and that's where it takes a little bit more skill. And they just didn't seem to have it for many years. So yeah, we'll see if perhaps the new guy in town can get some decent prospects to stock up the cupboard. They've got a 2nd round pick this year, so we'll see if they can get themselves a decent draft pick with it. All right, we'll take one more break. We'll come back, Dave, and let's talk about the Canadian national squad and the 2 Maple Leafs who are announced as part of the initial 6 players named to each country's roster for the 2026 Olympic Games. That's right, the Olympics coming back, or I guess the NHL is coming back to the Olympics. The Olympics never left. It was the NHL that left. And we're so happy about it. We'll talk about it next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, David Morassutti with you as always. And the NHL will be returning to the Olympic Games next year in 2026. They're in Italy, right? Back in Torino?
Milan Cortina.
Milan. That's it. Yeah, Milan. Yeah. So they're in Italy and Milan. And the last time that Milan held a Winter Games, I believe the Canadians didn't even medal, if I'm not mistaken. They lost in 2006. Didn't even medal in
Torino.
Yeah, in Torino. So hopefully they can reverse the fortunes and not only medal, but defend their gold. The last time Canada or the NHLers were at the Olympic Games was 2014. The last time that they were there, 2014. The last time that we saw NHLers at the Olympics in Sochi. Canada, gold medalist. 2010 on Canadian soil, Canada, gold medalist. So they're back-to-back gold medalists with NHLers, the best in the world out there. And they're defending the Four Nations Cup championship as well. So we're all in on Canada, obviously, here, the Locked On Leafs podcast. And Dave, who are the initial 6 players selected to Team Canada?
Well, to no surprise, you got Sidney Crosby,
Mm-hmm.
Connor McDavid, Cale Makar,
shocker,
Sam Reinhart.
Slightly surprising. Continue.
You had Braden Point.
Makes sense.
Who am I missing? I'm missing
for Canada.
Yeah,
McKinnon.
And McKinnon. There you go.
Yeah. So there's your Team Canada. The only one that I guess would be considered like interesting would be Sam Reinhart. But I mean, with what the guy's been doing, 3 straight trips to a cup final, he was on Canada's team at the Four Nations. Guy scored 56 goals a year ago. I guess it makes some sense there to have him on the roster, but makes total sense that they went with Crosby and McKinnon and McDavid and Makar. Those ones were locks. Braden Point's pretty much a lock as well. And good for Sam Reinhart to get himself into that mix of players. It's a special group, and he's kind of put himself on that platform. As for elsewhere around the NHL, we did have Austin Matthews get named to Team USA again. No shocker there. Probably going to captain the team, I would think, again, because they announced captains, right? Was he announced as the captain?
I don't think they announced captains. I didn't see.
I thought I saw Crosby was announced as captain, though. Or did that not? Did somebody just assume that? I
think it was just assumed. Yeah. Okay. Because it's funny because they had. I was trying to remember. Yeah, I know that one of Crosby and McDavid made a statement. But yeah, I don't remember seeing any captain's name to any of the rosters. Just the players were picked.
Yeah, and I would expect Matthews though to get the C again, I guess, or no, maybe not. Maybe they decide to go in a different direction and go with someone else after they kind of failed to get it done at the Four Nations face-off. Maybe a Jack Eichel, where they pick someone on the blue line on the back end. Maybe it's a Zach Werenski or a Quinn Hughes who can get the captaincy for Team USA. But yeah, Austin Matthews, unsurprisingly, part of the initial 6 players selected for Team USA, and then William Nylander, the other Maple Leaf, who was named to Sweden's initial roster. Gabe Landeskog named to the initial roster as well. So it sounds like Sweden's thinking that Landeskog, his resurgence in the playoffs was not a mirage. He should be back and ready to go for next season and for the Olympics. And what a story that would be if we could see that guy specifically, Gabe Landeskog, playing Olympic hockey. Who would have thought that 2 years ago?
It's one of the better comeback stories I think we've seen in a little while. Like what he went through. I remember when the injury happened, I'm like, it didn't seem too bad. And then you hear about it, and it's like, okay, no, it was pretty bad. And like I was, follow his return. I thought he was going to come back last year. Just wasn't feeling too good about it. So yeah, glad that he's back. It seems like Colorado really needed him, but also Sweden. Like I remember you look at Sweden and you think about why they have struggled. That's a pretty significant player that you're without, and he's likely going to be the captain for that. Him or Hedman likely will be the captain for them going into that Olympics.
Yep. So that was interesting. Any other interesting names that kind of popped out to you elsewhere around the league?
No, I mean, for me, it was. I was like, who's going to be on the Italian team? You want me to read the names?
Sure.
Damian Clara, who plays in the AHL for San Diego. Thomas Larkin, true Italian-born name there. Luca Zanata, he plays out in Austria. Diego Kostner, they got another beautiful Italian name there. Tommy Perdeller. Yep. And then you finally Daniel Mantenuto.
Okay,
that's the Italian name right there. I was waiting for.
Let's bring Frankie Corrado
Frankie Corrado, Carlo Koliakovo,
Lucas Spiza, Carlo Koliakovo. Who else? There's got to be like a Luca Caputi. See if he can get off. I think he's coaching now, isn't he? Luca Caputi. I believe he's coaching, if I'm not mistaken, in the CHL. Maybe bring him back into the fold at some point. It's going to be interesting to see that lineup, Italy's lineup, play Canada's lineup. Like we haven't actually seen like that big of a skill discrepancy in a long time. Like Latvia, okay, there's not a big Latvian team out there, but they've got a couple of decent players. They got a few NHLers.
They go and play in the World Championship, so they're
right,
at least
They're a tier 1 World Championship team like Denmark and Germany. Italy, it'll be interesting as the host nation what type of roster they can ice. If they can get a win against any team, I think that would be considered a success for that nation. All right. Anything you wanted to bring up or address today before we get out of here, Dave?
No, we'll see how Game 6 goes. Will we see a repeat on home ice, or are we going to see Edmonton force a Game 7?
I hope they force a Game 7. I hope Stu Skinner stands on his head and they force a Game 7 back in Edmonton. That's what I want to see.
Wouldn't surprise me. Florida hasn't had that. I mean, it could be very much a repeat of the second round.
Yeah, which would suck if Edmonton laid a stinker in Game 7. I don't know. I was gonna say I can't see it happening, but I didn't see it happening also in Toronto, and it did. So, yeah, I hope it doesn't happen. I guess is what I should say. But they got to win tonight in order to force a second consecutive Game 7 in the Stanley Cup playoffs between Edmonton and Florida. So it should be an entertaining game tonight. Puck drop at 8 p.m. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. I've been taking a peek at some free agent names. There's one that's kind of sticking out to me, Dave. I'll tell you who that is on tomorrow's episode. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.